record.
Hello, Street Snappers, and welcome to episode 11 of the Street Photography Podcast with me, your host, Brian Duckett. The feature item in today's episode is an interview with a street photographer who I really rate. He's not a household name yet, but I think many of you may well recognise his work. I've just got back from a holiday in Italy. Where else? And as usual, trying to get back to some kind of normal rhythm. But that rhythm is about to be shattered in a few days, actually tomorrow now, because I'm on the road again, this time to the splendid city of Prague for a workshop. And as usual, I built in a bit of time for myself, either side of the workshop, to shoot my own stuff. I try not to shoot my own stuff during workshops, generally. I just don't think it's very fair on the paying clients if I spend all my time shooting my own material. So I build in a couple of days either side for my own stuff. And I got a couple of projects on the go in Prague, as usual. I'm hoping to get one of them finished this week, but who knows. And this one's all about tourism, or over-tourism particularly, or even alco-tourism, as it's sometimes called. And you could say it's the Disneyfication of Prague. Tacky souvenir shops, tourist menus, the naff attractions, loads of stag and hen parties and drunk people. It's all very good for street photography, but I do feel a bit sorry for the locals who just see their beautiful city being destroyed by all the tat. So today's episode will be a slightly shorter one, as I'm caught with only a few days between Italy and Prague. But I'm keen to stick to the fortnightly format for this show and not miss a week. Anyway, enough of the rambling. Let's get straight in today's interview. And I'm talking to Neil Johansson today, who, like most of you, I guess, is a passionate amateur street photographer. I've known Neil for, I reckon, 11 years, when he came on his first workshop with me, which was in Liverpool, and I think it was in 2015. But during these 11 years, I've watched Neil grow as a street photographer. And he's one of those people you just know good things are going to happen to. So, Neil, it's great to see you and hear you. And thanks ever so much for doing this. I've been wanting to do this with you for a long time. We've known each other for a long time. And, I think you're the kind of perfect example of a street photographer in many ways, that you came from kind of almost nowhere really, but you've made it work for you and you've done it in your own unique way. And I just think so many people would be interested to hear about your story and how you made it all happen. So where are you from? You're from North Wales, aren't you?
Yeah, I live in a town called Rhyl in Denbighshire. It's kind of an old seaside town.
And do you get it? Is it the kind of seaside town where you can do some Martin Parr type seaside stuff? I guess that's not really your bag, though, is it?
It's not my bag, no. I think you can do, but it's quite small. I mean, it's almost like a small Blackpool, a smaller scale Blackpool in a way. But it's not. That's not my bag, no. And I think for my mind, Martin Parr did it brilliantly anyway. So it's trying to recreate that. It's not something that I'd want to do anyway, but. Yeah. It's possible, I suppose.
So how did you first get, just leaving street photography aside for a minute, how did you first get into photography generally? What was the key moment for you?
I sort of messed around. I did it in high school. I took photography from my A-levels and I sort of started there a little bit. I even did some portrait work back then, which is from my classmates, but I never But I didn't really get into it until after university. After I came back from university, then I started mainly. But I guess A-level was definitely the beginning. It's just kind of like a slow build kind of thing. It's sort of, the seed was definitely A-level, but it's sort of just built up slowly over a long period of time.
So are you did you start with film, or are you of an age where you started with digital?
Digital. But I have
Okay.
shot film since then, but I
Yeah.
started digital.
And then what was your first camera?
Panasonic FZ5. It's like an old a bridge camera. I still have it. And I think I got it as a Christmas present or birthday present when I started to take photography seriously. I think up until that point, I'd been borrowing compacts and things like that. So that was my first real camera, and I loved it. I did take some good shots of it.
And
So
you still got it. That's great.
yeah.
What was your entry point into street photography then? When did this all start to happen for you, and how?
Well, I started again. It's like the period after I came back home from university, and I basically just started shooting with my cameras. Started to get more cameras at that point. I didn't have any agenda when I went out. I just took photos of what I liked, and it slowly evolved into sort of a more street-based approach. And then I did very well at a competition, a Royal Photographic Society competition, where I got a silver medal, second place, and I won a place on Goldsmiths International Urban Photography Summer School. That was back in 2014, and that's when it really started. And then about a year later, I did one of your workshops. I think that was in 2015, and then it sort of just kept building and building.
Yeah, great. I mean, Goldsmiths is quite. I mean, it's quite an impressive institution, isn't it? Is it part of London University, isn't it? Goldsmiths.
Yeah, I think it focuses on the arts and things, and I think I was even tempted to do a master's down there at some point in photography, urban photography, but
Oh, yeah, that would have been great. I remember Goldsmiths when I was a student. I was a student at Greenwich, and we used to go to Goldsmiths on a Wednesday night for the Wednesday night disco. And there was a nurses' home next door, and all the nurses used to go as well. So we had a fantastic Wednesday night. But anyway, that's we won't talk about that much more. So, how would you describe your style? I mean, I know your style, and it is distinctive. How would you put it into words, Neil?
I think it's mostly aesthetic. Definitely, there's a large degree of aesthetic approach to it, but I think it's difficult to say. I think it's more than that. There's something I focus on. It's difficult to describe, but I think the closest thing is that I'm aesthetically based. But I do think there's other elements in there that may contribute to it, and I've been thinking about this because you never. I don't. I mean, I didn't see I have a style of sorts, but I think it's easier for other people to recognize that than yourself sometimes. I don't know. So, but I'd definitely say I'm interested in the image itself, the actual, does it look, it's like an instinct I have. I know I want to try and get it a certain way, but it's kind of instinctive.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, an instinct, because I've been out shooting with you, and you just see something that other people don't see, and then you just nail it and turn it into something really good. And I think there's often an element of abstract about it, isn't there?
Oh yeah, I think it's like I do. I mean, it's got a lot of my street doesn't actually have people in it. I'm open to sort of a broader approach, and I think a lot of that's to do. You know, I do have an more artistic bent and artistic background. That's where some of my interests lie. I've kind of not just influenced by photographers, but by artists as well as a whole, I'd say.
Yeah, and that shines through. I mean, one way I describe it is very conceptual, and we'll give people links so they can see your work towards the end, and I think that will help put it into focus for them. So, if you were to draw parallels between your work and well-known street photographers, who would come into mind? And don't be bashful here.
I think there's a couple I can think of straight away. Saul Leiter, I think some of my definitely parallels, I think, for some of my work. And then Daido Moriyama, because I love his black and white. That was definitely when I discovered him, that was a massive influence. But then more sort of recent photographers I found inspiration from Olga Karlovac and Giacomo Brunelli, great black and white photographers. I love their work, and I've really inspired by the work. I think particularly with Olga's sort of blurred ICM kind of stuff. I've tried to loosen some of my stuff. You don't have to have everything in focus sometimes, and I think that's quite just trying different techniques. I think that's really.
Yeah, you're quite an experimentalist, aren't you? As I think were all those people you mentioned, and I think with Saul Leiter, a lot of people try to emulate Saul Leiter. And if you look at Instagram now, it's full of it. But they all look very much the same. I think the mistake a lot of people make is hone in on somebody like Saul Leiter, and instead of trying to make it their own, they just try to imitate what he's done. And I think you do the opposite of that. You take influences, but you make it your own. Is that a fair comment?
I hope. Oh, I'd like to think so. I think, like you say, it's trying to put myself in there. It's what I'm interested in because I don't see that. I mean, there is, I think, a value in looking at other people's work for influence. It's just you don't want to try and copy them completely. You do want to put something of yourself into it. But when I think of it in terms of art, you have people like, the artists, they always studied the old masters. They even copied, reproduced in their own style of the old masters' work. And that's kind of the way I'm, thinking my approach is with some street sometimes. But with photography, you can't do that. You can't copy it precisely. I mean, for an example, I did go to London to a place where Matt Stewart took a couple of good photographs. There's a particular picture on the front of Street Photography now of a pigeon.
Mm.
And I think there's people's feet, and it's so well balanced. Now, I knew I wasn't going to replicate that shot entirely, but I went there and I got different shots because I was inspired by that image. So that's the way I see things, really, in that sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. So thinking, I know a lot of your work very well, and the first thing that comes to mind is black and white, monochrome. Why black and white? What's the attraction over color for you?
I think mainly I think it's influential black and white films that really sort of started that out. I love my favorite black and white film of all time is Eraserhead by David Lynch. And I like the aesthetic of it, the feel of it, the atmosphere. I just think I do color, and I think color's great. For certain shots of mine will only work in color, but my preference is always going to be for black and white. I just
Mm.
I think, it feels like there's more soul or meaning to it. I think, and I think there are a couple of quotes. I think Elliot Erwitt said something about color is descriptive, black and white is interpretive. I think that he said something along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good quote, isn't it? I think, yeah.
Yeah.
So you say David Lynch was an inspiration. What about other directors, people like Kubrick? Do you relate to him in any way?
A little bit, but I think it's something. I mean, I have seen a lot of Kubrick's work, and I love his. The Killing was an early film noir by Kubrick, and that's great. But I think a lot of those films I came late. I saw later on. Eraserhead, I saw sort of fairly early on, and that sort of stayed with me. And then I've been completely hooked by David Lynch's work since. I mean, there are other films, black and white, the early noir stuff that I've just gone through, and there's so much amazing work out there. But Lynch just really really caught, just captured my imagination.
Yeah. And you seem to be one of these people who can somehow draw really stylish images out of the most mundane locations and situations. And I know people will give their IT for that. What's your secret? How do you do that?
Been thinking about this myself, but I think even before had a camera or held the camera when I was young, I was always looking and watching things. I mean, if you ask me, I always used to sort of watch everything around me. I even started drawing roads and things when I was younger. I kept all those drawings. So I've always had this eye for looking at stuff that other people overlook. It's sort of always been there. And I've just kind of kept that up to date, kept going with it, and been inspired by other photographs, other films and things. It's just kind of built up an internal sort of visual aesthetic, an internal visual library of things that I'm drawn to. And it's just built up over time. It's hard to describe, but I think that's probably the best word, really.
Yeah. I get the impression that you found your voice fairly early on in the process, and it didn't take you long. I mean, you're a young guy now, so I get the impression you were starting to find your voice quite early on in the journey. What advice would you give to somebody who is struggling to find their voice? Because this is a really common problem. What would you say to them?
I think it's important to look at things other than photography. It's obviously, if you're a photographer, you want to be photographing all the time. I would go out there without an agenda. I would just take photographs as often as possible, but not worry about projects at first. Just keep photographing. And that's how I did it. And oddly enough, I don't feel like I think is you always develop and grow as you go along anyway. It's not something that's going to stop. You know, you just keep moving. But the important thing is to keep shooting. I think that's the best advice anyone can give anyone. That's advice I was certainly given. You know, shoot first, ask questions later is the way I put it. Because, you know, if you're too worried about it at the time, oh, should I, shouldn't I? You're not going to take the shot.
Mm.
I miss something.
No, that's good advice. So what are you currently working on? Well, let's talk projects for a minute. Now, I know that you know that I feel very strongly about projects, and that projects are a big driver for me. And I know the same can be said of you. So what are you currently working on? Give us a flavour.
I have a few long-term ones. I think most of mine are open-ended. They all are pretty much open-ended because I feel like you might get the perfect shot for your project anytime. So I think the ones I'm working on now include sort of noir, which is inspired street photography inspired by film noir, basically. And then I've got Within Without, which is sort of slowed down a bit, but I haven't stopped it because I still might end up doing more on that. And that's basically documenting empty shops on the high street, capturing reflections. It's almost like a documentary in a way on that one. And then I'm doing things like Lacuna is an unusual one. It's sort of it's not just street, but it encompasses a lot of things. It's kind of like all the shots that don't fit into my other projects. I kind of have a project for that. A few Identity Obscura one is a good one that I'm doing. Again, some of these I get shots pretty much all the time, and some of them it's every so often. But Identity Obscura is people's faces obscured by either things on plastic bush shelters and things like that. So they're obscured. There's a few others as well. But it's always good to have multiple projects because then if you go out, you're going to get something for them. Mm. That's the way I look at it. And that's probably the best thing I learned from you was the projects. I think that's really sort of been a big help.
Yeah, I'm glad that stuck with you because it is so important, isn't it? And as you say, if you're working on 4, 5, 6 projects, maybe more, you're always going to find something. You'll never be short of material. You know, we hear of these people saying that I went out yesterday, couldn't find anything to shoot. If they were working on projects, they probably would. So it is a game changer in that sense. And are any of these about to crystallize into books or zines or exhibitions or anything?
I think Lacuna will be. I've got quite a lot of work for Lacuna, and I'm going to do a book on that. But I've been figuring out ways of doing it, but I think the best way is probably to do it myself and have a limited amount. I did have an opportunity not long ago, but it didn't work out costs. So I'm just working out because I want to keep the costs down for people that want people to buy this. But I'm thinking hopefully the book, once I do it, it'll probably be in the £20 category kind of thing. Because I think that's kind of the opportunity I lost. They would have charged £100 a book, which is just excessive. It needs to be reasonably priced. But I've got enough work to do a book for Lacuna, definitely enough strong images. So I'm taking time, but I want to get it right.
Yeah, I think you're right to do that. And I've seen quite a few pictures from this project, I think, Lacuna, and it definitely deserves to be a book. It needs to be a book. I think you're right to wait until you can do something that is really good quality. And it's an art book, isn't it? It's not like a regular photo book that a lot of people produce. I think it has to be a step above that because it's your first book. You know, you've got a bit of a name out there. It's got to be right, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so what about exhibitions then? I mean, every time I look at Facebook or Instagram or something, I see your name's popped up and that you've entered an award or you've picked up some kind of accolade. What's your secret there? How is it? Did you play the numbers game or are you very selective? How do you play the exhibitions thing? Sorry, the competitions thing.
It's basically luck, really. I mean, I've done well. I think part of it's luck, definitely. It's just because it's just a matter of taste, and you might just hit upon the right judge for your work. It's sometimes you can't really predict it. So it is. I think as well, like you say, numbers game, I try to enter as much as I can, but obviously cost is a factor. You have to take advantage. Sometimes you can get free entries and things like that. So I do take advantage of that. But it's just being specific and making sure I'm entering my best work, my best. Sometimes you can enter single images, but I think for me, strongest way is entering series. I'm not saying I don't have strong individual images, but most of the comps, I think I've done well in have been based on the series rather than the single image. But it is a lot of it is luck. You just hit, get it at the right time. I've collected plenty where I haven't gotten anywhere, but it's not. It's just I think the main thing is just to keep continuing, really.
It's interesting, isn't it? Exhibitions. I think they polarize opinion a little bit. Sorry, not. I keep saying exhibitions when I mean competitions. Competitions. They polarize opinion a bit. And you look at some of the big competitions and look at some of the winning images. And I don't know about you, but I look at them and think, it's not really all that good.
Yeah, I mean, I know there was a guy on YouTube looking at all the entries in the competitions, and it's quite interesting to see his thoughts on them. And I think I do agree in some cases, but again, it's just a matter of taste, and I think it's like there's fashions in it as well. I think there's certain types of images that are in fashion, and there's things like that. There's a few factors, I think, but I think it's important not to be disheartened by it. You never know when you just never know. But it's hard to say exactly. But sometimes it's always going to be the same. There's always going to be some shots that are as good as others getting through. But
so what about prints, Neil? Is there a role for the printed image in what you do? Do you do your own printing? Do you sub it out to labs, or do you not print?
I do a bit. I think it's a bit of both. I print stuff at home, but I don't have an A3 printer, so it's kind of like A4 or smaller, really. And I do that. I've got like my books. I keep printouts of some of my pictures just so I can do a project book. So it's quite nice to have it not just on my phone, but to physically look at my work. It's quite nice. But for the prints for exhibitions and stuff, it's if the exhibitions and competitions, either the competition covers it or I send out and get the prints specially made elsewhere because they're usually going to be A3. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixture. Really.
Yeah. I mean, I love printing. I just think the tactile, the experience of holding your picture in your hands, as you say, is far better than looking at it on a phone or a screen. And I bought recently an Epson EcoJet printer. EcoTank, Epson EcoTank 8550, I think. And this prints to A3. It wasn't expensive. I don't spend a lot of money on printers. And it's really cheap to run. I can't believe how many prints I can make out of a set of inks. And it's great for black and white. I saw it at the photography show a couple of years ago and they were demoing it. And I said, demo it with black and white for me. And they did, and it was fantastic. And I've always been put off by the cost of ink, but this is like a tenth of what you would pay if you had those little expensive cartridges with chips in. It takes kind of full size, like little mini milk bottles full of ink. It's fantastic. So thinking about the shooting process itself, when you're out there on the streets, Neil, are you a solo shooter? Do you prefer company? How does it work for you?
I think it's a bit of both, really. I mostly shoot on my own. It's just easier to get shots, and I think too many people. In a way, it's a different experience because if you shoot on your own, you can just have complete freedom where you're going and where you're shooting. But if you're with someone, you have to sort of go with the flow a bit. But again, you get shots that way as well. So I think there's value in both. And I hang out with Tim Roberts quite a bit, so we go shooting to sort of. Places like Shrewsbury, Chester, Liverpool all the time, but I've gotten shots when I'm out with Tim that I wouldn't have taken otherwise, or because of the opportunity, because of the way things work out. So having this value in both, but I think maybe too many people it can become tricky. But if it's like a couple of you, I think you can have a really good experience.
And you can drink a beer or two.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, we hit all pubs as well. So that's interesting in itself.
Okay, so very quick question here. Instagram, yes or no, and why?
Yeah, I think the advantages outweigh the disadvantages of it. I think I've gotten a lot of hits lately, so I think there's a visibility aspect to it that I like about it. I can post something and people, eventually see it. And people have moaned about it, and this latest thing with the hashtags and stuff. But I'm okay with it as long as continue to just keep posting. I don't get many hits on individual pictures. It sort of goes up and down, but I have had a few more followers now, so I think I'm basically getting a bit more visibility, which is good. I think, and it's great to see. What I like it for is to see other people's work, but there's so much on there. It just takes the time to scroll through, but sometimes you find there's so much to view. I just think you've got to be careful what you put on. I'm trying to sort my Instagram feed down a little bit, but at least you can do. It's taking me time, but I am whittling it down a bit.
I just found out. I don't know if you know this, but as from yesterday, you can move around the images on your grid on Instagram. So you can put your best ones so that they appear. Well, you can change the order so that the one sits well next to its neighbours. You can have some higher up the feed, some lower up the feed, and you just do a long press, a long click on the image, and you can shuffle them around. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that, but I'll definitely look into that. So that could be helpful.
As of yesterday, I think, for those of us who use Instagram as a little bit of an online portfolio, I think it's a really good feature.
Yeah, I think that's going to be more flexible, definitely.
So on a slightly lighter note, now I know that you're a keen collector of cameras, Neil. How many are in your collection now? And which of those would you never give up?
It's definitely in the 600 range. I think it's 621 as I last checked, although there's a few more I need to add to the list. Although, to be fair to me, I am planning to sort of do a little bit of reduction, slightly reducing it, and being more circumspect. But I think the main cameras I won't give up are my Ricoh GRs. Definitely, I'm trying to collect the whole set of those. But I'm a 2 Rolleiflexes, but I think there's a few I won't give up, but I'm having to be a little bit more circumspect with them now. There's quite a few.
Yeah, it's just a nice thing, though, isn't it? Collecting cameras, and when you've got a collection like that, it's hard to get rid. But I suppose you have to.
I mean, it started off not oddly enough. I had an intention with it when I first started it because I kept seeing cameras in charity shops today, and they had the SD cards in. So that's why I picked up a lot of digital cameras early on because I found old photographs on these SD cards, and that fascinated me, and just finding different things on them. So that was kind of where it all started, but it sort of developed into a massive obsession since then.
That's quite interesting, isn't it? Buying cameras and looking at what's on the SD card. It's like people buying boxes of slides or negs, and you kind of don't know what you're getting. I find that quite fun. You mentioned the Ricoh GRs. What about the GR Mono version? Have you got one of those?
That's a camera I want to get. That's probably going to be my next camera. I've been holding back a little bit. I just wanted to see how people got on with it, but it looks great, and I'll definitely buy one. At the moment, I'm using the GR2, and I'm doing all my black and white shooting with that. It's fantastic. I went back because I've got the GR3 as well, but the GR2 has got a few things that the GR3 doesn't have that I prefer. So it's for me, it's the perfect GR until I get the monochrome. I suspect that's probably going to be a different beast entirely. Good.
So where do you shoot, Neil? I know you shoot in real where you live, but what's your kind of go-to location at the moment?
Probably around the northwest. I mean, Chester, Liverpool, Shrewsbury. I'm landed now, sort of the North Wales coast and northwest. I'd like to do Blackpool more. I've done that a couple of times because I think there's really good stuff up there. And then Venice is another place I like to go to when I can. I think it's just money, but I'd like to go Venice more regularly and do a lot more black and white shooting there. It's perfect. It's great. And finding places like that where it's so cinematic, that's the key. But I think we've got a lot in this country that's pretty good as well.
Yeah, I think Venice in the winter would really, really suit you well. And you can do it on the cheap. If you stay outside the heart of the city centre, it can be done at a reasonable cost. And the flights are relatively cheap in November, December, January. So, yeah, I think Venice would be great for you with your Ricoh and your style. So what's your dream camera? If I gave you 10 grand now and said, go on, off you go, what would you come home with?
I think it's probably going to be the GR monochrome, oddly enough, the GR4 monochrome. I think, because I was thinking about the Leica Q3 monochrome, and that I have, if I was offered one, I wouldn't say no, but I think the GR4 monochrome has got that compact. It's a lot smaller than the Leica Q monochrome. So definitely, yeah, I think, yeah, definitely the GR.
And I think the Ricos have got, whether it's the monochrome or whether it's your GR2, I think they've got a nice harder edge, a contrastier look than the Leicas. The Leica monochromes, I think they can look a little bit too smooth and a bit too perfect, whereas the Ricoh is, it's very Moriyama, isn't it? It's very raw.
Yeah, I like that quality to it. I think there's a high contrast. There's different filters on it, but there's the high hard monochrome, high contrast monochrome. That's the one I use a lot. And the JPEGs look. I don't have to do much editing on them, which is really good.
Yeah, I use the GR3 with the hard monochrome simulation or filter, and the blue sky goes almost black. Amazing. So, who would you most like to collaborate with on a project, past or present? If you're going to work together with somebody on a book, who would it be, or who would it have been?
Well, I mean, I have to say the dream would have been someone like David Lynch, but that's that can't happen. But I think there are a couple of photographers, out there that I'd love to work with. I think it's whether or not our styles would be complementary or not. I've thought about this. It's just don't know how it actually how it works with collaboration, because I'm so used to doing things my own, on my own. I'm definitely open to it. I'm just curious as to how actually a collaboration would work.
Yeah, it's always something to think about, isn't it? Yeah, I'm sure there are plenty of people who, you would have complementary skills and approaches that are sufficiently different, but they would just work well together.
Yeah,
I think it's really interesting doing that, but it's just hard finding the right person to do it with. It's difficult. So going back in time, Neil, and thinking back to the start of this great journey, what's the best bit of advice now that you would give to your younger self?
try and tell my younger self not to worry and just keep taking photographs as often as you can. Because I think I have, I do wonder whether I do have, look at my work sometimes and you lose perspective. And I just enjoy the process anyway. Now I'm not worried as much, but I think when I was younger, I worried a lot more about, am I any good at this? Is this, what can I do with this? And I think I would try and tell my younger self not to think about that too much and just go with what feels right and just, photograph what what you want to do. So I think part of the thing is I wanted street. It was immediate. For me, what I like about photography is immediate. You take a picture and you've got something. That's kind of why one of the reasons I liked it. But I mean, there's a lot of document. I quickly realised that traditional documentary is not for me. Even though I'm doing projects and they are long term, but I got more control over them. But when there's documentary, I respect the art form itself. The actual, people like Don McCullen and Chris Killip, and the amount or the lengths some of them went to get all those images. I just realised that wasn't for me, and I'd say to my younger self that's not a bad thing. It's just different. And not everyone. It doesn't mean what I'm doing is lesser. It's just different. I think that's probably the main thing I would tell myself.
I think that's good advice. I think part of that comes with age and experience, doesn't it? You kind of relax into it and you don't overthink it as much. Yeah, you don't worry as much. I think the younger we are, the more we're concerned about what other people think as creative people. Am I good enough? Can I do this? What will people think? And we need to put all that out of our head. And as you say, just keep shooting and it'll come right. I think that's great advice. So what's the future for Neil Johansson? Where is all this leading for you personally? And what are you going to look like in 5 or 10 years' time as a photographer?
I'd like to have, and I can tell you what I'd like to accomplish. I'd like to have a solo exhibition somewhere at some point with my best work. I don't know how that will work out, but it'd be nice, and obviously hopefully have a book back, or even a couple of books done by that. It's just little achievements that I feel that I can work on and hopefully and hopefully it'll increase my visibility. Just rather than thinking I'm not sure, and I'm sure I'll have different projects and things like that come up as well. So it's just, but I don't know where this will actually all lead and such. It's just I've got things that I want to sort of tick off and do. I'd like to do a YouTube channel possibly at some point. Again, it's just I'm thinking about how to do it to sort of stand out a little bit, but have a lot of it is just thinking about not some, I know I'll do it, but I want to make sure I do it properly. And I think, unfortunately, my thinking time at the moment is taken up by other things as well. So that's why it's taking me time to get around to doing these things, but I do intend to do them.
Okay. So finally, Neil, where can we find you? Are there any web or social links you want to give out? And obviously, I'll put them in the show notes, but it would be good to hear from you how you want people to discover you.
My Instagram feed is at Sven804. I'm often on Instagram. That's probably the easiest way. I do have a website with pixel rights as well, that you can message me there too. I'm on Twitter. My feed, I'm on X. That's also Sven804 and Threads. My website is neil-johansson.pixelrights.com.
Neil-Johansson at pixelrights.com.
Yeah, it's actually .pixelrights.com. Sorry, I've copied the web link here. So
yeah,
so neil-johansson.pixelrights.com. Yeah.
Okay, and your social links is Sven SVEN 804.
Yeah.
Okay, and what about? I know you've produced several zines over in recent years, Neil. Are you still selling those? Can people buy those from you?
Yeah, I still have some here. I've got my latest one, Noir, and I've still got quite a few of those. I think some of the others have sort of, I know my Lacuna zine has sort of mostly gone. I'd have to do a reprint, but I'm hoping to do a book of that anyway. I am still working on more zines, so I'll probably end up doing more zines. I didn't post them on Instagram, but I probably should next time, just to see more people would probably be more interested. Getting them, I've kind of wanted to try and control the numbers for, see how, just take it easy. But I think maybe I will actually promote them a bit more than I have done. I was just sort of testing the water. Well, not testing the water, but I just wanted to hold back a bit just to see how things go with it, really. But if anyone's interested, they can contact me. I've got my latest one, Noir. I've got quite a few zines of that left.
Okay. I mean, I can certainly vouch for them. I've got 2 or 3 of your zines, and I would thoroughly recommend them for this. This style of black and white, conceptual, aesthetic street photography. It makes such a refreshing change from the sort of stuff that you often see of, a silhouette of somebody walking past some offices and, typical high contrast stuff that Instagram is full of. And once you've seen one, you've seen them all. But your stuff isn't like that. And for those who don't know you and haven't seen your work, it's easy for people to fall into the trap of thinking that all photographers who do this kind of stuff are all the same. But your approach is just so different, and it's really refreshing. So I hope people do discover you and find your zines and buy them and buy your books when they're out there. So I think from my point of view, Neil, that this wraps it up very nicely. And I'd just like to say thank you for coming along. I'm sure people would be really interested to hear your story.
Oh, thank you for having me, Brian. I don't often get to talk about my photography like this, so it's quite good. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, great. Okay. So thanks again, Neil. That was fantastic. And I'll see you on the street soon, no doubt.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
That was Neil Johansson talking about his own very dedicated journey as a street photographer. And I'll pop the links to his work in the show notes below, but briefly, you can find him at Sven804. That's SVEN 804 on Instagram and Threads and X and everything else. So now Prague beckons. I'll be taking my M11 and a 35mm lens with me and not much else. I do try to travel light on these trips. I don't really want to be walking around with a big bag full of lenses and other stuff. So I've got to do some packing now, which I absolutely hate because I always leave stuff behind. So I'll be back with you in around 2 weeks with the usual magazine style show. Bye for now.